Well, well, well. Looks like we have another visitor to join us for our freak show. Do you think you will escape from the torture? Perhaps you will, but only if you're near our freak show. Welcome everyone. My name is Stu. Oh no, well, my name is Mr. Gargoyle, hosting episode number 26 of the Bloody Channels podcast on October the 27th, 2019. You have arrived to all of eternity as we discuss some of our most favorite horror and chilling movies. I also have with me today, and I think that man over there, what's in a funny looking mask? What's his name now? Kanzilla?
My name is Kenzelda, my pretties.
Oh, okay, that was Kanzilla. And then on my other side here we have I'm not sure what we have here. He looks a little strange, but you know what? I think he dropped off. Uh-oh.
I don't see him.
I don't see him either. Okay.
Where's Mr. Cardboard? I think he may have shut off his camera.
Yes. If he can hear us, then he should definitely turn his camera back on. I don't know what's going on there, but...
Wait, he is there, but he is very small.
Oh, is he? Okay, we'll have to fix that.
Like a sliver.
Okay. We'll see where he is. I don't know what happened there. That's weird. Well, that's what happens when you come to a Halloween thing anyways. Things don't quite work out quite right.
There, he's sort of there. He's getting closer. Closer.
Closer to the hole.
There's a third.
Oh, there we go. Oh. A lock him into place there. Anyway, so this gentleman on the other side of me, I don't know what his deal is. He looks kind of like a cardboard clown, but maybe you can tell me what you are.
Hi, I am a cardboard man.
Oh my goodness, the cardboard man filled up the whole screen. I don't know what's going on here. I think we're going to mute the cardboard man because something's not right there. But we can still hear the cardboard man, right? Mr. Cardboard Man, are you still there?
Hi, I am a cardboard man.
Okay, this is the Mr. Cardboard Man right there. Woo! Cardboard Man. Okay, we're gonna turn you off, Cardboard Man, because you keep messing up my stream. Anyways, thanks for joining us today and joining us for these unsightly ghouls that you see. So each of us today have 3 deliciously gruesome picks for you and why we thought why they're our favorite horror list. So what we're gonna do is run down a couple show notes here. So I'm gonna start with my number 3 pick, why I liked it, and the most scary and gruesome moment in that movie. And
hi, I am a cardboard man.
Yes, you are definitely the cardboard man. And then finally, our rating from hell, or Dante's Circle of Hell out of 9. And to tell everybody whether it is a rating from hell or if it's rather a Care Bear flick. So we may discuss this towards the end of it. So, I don't think we decided who was going to go first, so we can have either Ken or Rosto go first. Who wants to go first?
I will go first.
Okay, you will go first. So, please tell us your number 3 pick.
My number 3 pick is the 1981 motion picture Canadian motion picture called Scanners, written and directed by Canadian body horror specialist David Cronenberg. It was filmed primarily in Montreal and Toronto, and this film actually got him, after having made 5 or 6 films already, got him noticed in the United States market. It stars the ultimate Canadian bad guy actor, in my opinion, Michael Ironside, Patrick McGoohan, who was in The Prisoner back in the 60s, Louis Del Grande of the beloved Canadian series Seeing Things on CBC, Jennifer O'Neill, a familiar face in TV and films of the 1980s, and Stephen Lack, a former actor and now painter. And a number of practical effects veterans were also part of this production, including Chris Wallace, Stephen Dupuis, the Dick Smith, the makeup expert we've discussed previously in our Exorcist podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He was brought in for the final showdown between the protagonist and antagonist, and a fellow named Gary Zeller, who is actually the inventor of the heat-shielding Zell gel, which is used to protect stuntmen who have to film sequences where their character is set afire. It's like a heat-shielding compound gel that keeps you from being affected, like harmed by flame.
So, in other words, they'll protect us from the fires of hell?
Well, I don't know if it works that well, but
Hey,
regular earthly
maybe we can
conflict rate.
maybe we can put Mr. Cardboard Man on fire and see if it works or not. He'll be the test subject, I think.
Well, I would think you would have to have him sign a waiver first.
What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Cardboard Man? Do you think you should be set on fire to test this?
Hi, I am a cardboard man.
Yes, you certainly are. But what are your thoughts about being lit on fire for an experiment?
I can try, but
Cardboard is very
unfortunately,
flammable, you know.
It is.
So what was the topic of this discussion?
We were talking about Zell gel and how useful it is. But maybe I should get back on track and start talking about the plot of Scanners.
Yes, please do. What? You don't necessarily have to go through the whole thing, but tell us why you liked it and some of the key moments, I suppose.
Well, I'll give a brief summary of the plot. It involves the emergence of people across the world with strong telekinetic abilities and who are divided into 2 factions who battle for control. There's one side that wants Scanners to dominate the world with their powers, and the other side that works underground to stop them and stay underneath the notice of regular society. And there are our main protagonist is called Cameron Vale, played by Stephen Lack. He's a derelict who is living rough on the streets, and he's found by a military contractor called Consec. This company and their chief scientist, Dr. Ruth, who is played by Mr. McGoohan, he wants him to help them defeat a fellow named Daryl Revick, who's played by Michael Ironside, who is a rogue scanner with plans to conquer the world through the use of the drug ephemeral, which is being exploited to increase the number of scanners worldwide, who are, of course, potential recruits for Mr. Daryl Revick. I enjoy this was actually the first time I had seen this film after having known about it for years. And I watched the Criterion Collection DVD edition, which has a new visual transfer supervised by Cronenberg himself and a number of special features, including a vintage TV interview with Cronenberg from, I believe, CBC, and new interviews with the effects team and Stephen Lack and Michael Ironside. And there's a lot of dealing with there's some subtext about dealing with fears of I guess military involvement or government or military involvement with special programs and stuff like that.
Hey, that's a very interesting pick.
And I think you were wanting me to talk about the scariest moment. Well, I think probably most people who are listening to this podcast, or maybe not, they're probably aware of what's called as the exploding head sequence, which involves Mr. Michael Ironside and Mr. Louis Del Grande. I won't say whose head is the one that, goes kerflooey, but people will find out if they decide to watch it. And in my very solid flick, very entertaining, very thought-provoking, and in my opinion, it reaches it's in between the 7th and 8th circles, I would say.
Seventh and eighth
It's a little bit it's a little bit dated in terms of its cinematography and that, but the suspense is very good and the action is good and the makeup effects are very good.
Oh,
I would say, in my opinion.
I haven't watched it in a
So
long
let's say
time.
the 7.5th circle of
Seven
the
point
7.5th
fifth.
circle. Yes.
Ooh, truly, truly hellfire. Like, I don't think there's any Care Bears in this movie.
There are no Care Bears in this film. Care Bears did not
Oh,
exist at that time, and even if they did exist, they would not be in this film.
okay.
It's not that kind of a horror show, folks.
Not that kind of a horror show. All right then.
No.
Or in that case, I guess I will move on to my number 3 pick. And my number 3, well, we have a witch who's trying to cast a spell on me for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
I was actually just saying, please feel free to tell us your number 3 pick.
Oh, very, very good, very good.
No, I am not casting spells as yet.
Or maybe a little bit later then.
Maybe later.
Maybe later. So my number 3 pick. My number 3 pick is BeetleJuice of all movies from 1998, who was created by Jim Burton. And BeetleJuice for me, I liked it because it was a light horror. It wasn't a gore, like a super gore fest, and it wasn't meant to be a movie that terrifies you to death, but there were certain scenes that were a little bit terrifying, I found. Maybe when I was a kid it was a little more terrifying than if I watched it today. But I'm a very old gargoyle. I'm in the I'm roughly 243 years old, so the first time I watched it I was just a baby gargoyle at maybe 100 or 215 years old. So Mr. or BeetleJuice, he was a very good character. You had Alec Baldwin and Winona Ryder, Gina Davis, Jeffrey Jones, all big name actors, and of course Michael Keaton. He played the role to a T, very outgoing and over the top in his role as Beetlejuice. For me, the most
Rider too.
what? Sorry, what was that, Mr. Cardboard Man?
Winona Rider.
Winona Ryder. Oh yes, we can't forget Winona Ryder for sure. And she was just a young lad at the time, a young little gal.
Yeah, she was younger.
And there was a spin-off series, a cartoon spin-off series I remember watching as a kid as well. So it was a good light horror movie. It's a total classic as well. So what I thought was the most scary or gruesome moment was when Beetlejuice actually turns into a serpent. I found that scene, that whole scene, it was a little longer scene, to be the most scary scene. Maybe I'm a little afraid of snakes, but I am a gargoyle, so I probably shouldn't admit that on the live stream. Gargoyles are supposed to be the protectors, but I have a little thing against snakes, so that was a little bit spooky for me, even Mr. Gargoyle. As for my rating out of 9, which level of hell does this belong in? I'm not going to go as high as a 7 or a 6. I'm going to say it probably rates at a 5th or a 6th circle of hell. And that's not necessarily that's my rating for the movie in general, but that's just to say that the spook factor was probably on the 5th level of hell. Alrighty. I think we have Rosto. Ooh, wait, that's not his name. His name is Cardboard Man. Sorry about that, Cardboard Man. What is your number 3 pick, Cardboard Man? Hello, Mr. Cardboard.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Even through the cardboard.
Okay. Okay, my number 3 is Creepshow, the very first one, from 1982, directed by George Romero, and as you all know, it's a compilation of 5 segments uh, that were based, I think, on a comic book. I think, not sure. Can you confirm? Was this? I think it was a comic book from 50s or 60s.
Um,
Short,
it was inspired by comic book stories from the 50s and 60s, specifically the publisher called EC Comics. But
exactly.
there was no particular. There was actually a Creepshow comic book published at the same time as the film, which was actually reprinted. And
Well, here we go.
yes, yeah,
And even special effects. The all stories are introduced in comic book panels. So you see actually the story going on in the panel, and then
that's right.
we,
Yeah.
we go to the normal scene. So we have 5 segments. It's not scary. I mean, when I saw it first time, I was scared. I mean, maybe the last one where the guy got eaten by the cockroaches. That was kind of creepy. I was looking for
Yes, I agree.
insects in my apartment. Like I was afraid. That was really spooky. So we have 5 seconds. We have Father's Day. That's the guy who was killed by his children. Then when there is his birthday, he comes back from beyond from back from death, and he demanding his birthday cake. Then we have the lonesome death of Jordi Verrill, where Stephen King himself plays this hillbilly who finds the meteorite that fell to ground, and some weird plants are growing everywhere from his face, from anywhere, and then he ends up his lonely life. Then he has something to tide you over. That was creepy, but also entertaining because Leslie Nielsen was in it. He was like this psychopathic killer who puts people in the sand, and then he watches how the tide is rising and suffocates them.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is a crate. I think that was from a university. In the basement, they found some kind of monster like Fluffy or whatever that eats, people. And then the last one, like I said, it's about the cockroaches eating up this very hygienic fellow who cares about his
Ooh.
apartment, and he's kind of hermetically sealed in the apartment, and then he's doing his morning meal, and from the box there is plenty of cockroaches, and then cockroaches are everywhere, and then they go out his eyes, and
Don't tell us when it goes out. No, 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 I don't want to know. I don't know. That's too much for me.
so I like this movie because it's by now it's a cult movie for sure. It was maybe from the beginning it wasn't noticed that much, but it's definitely a cult movie. And most gruesome scene is definitely with the cockroaches, and I would rate it 7 out of 9, definitely 7 out of 9.
So,
So
so,
that's my
so, uh,
first pick,
which circle of hell
and
would that be then?
I just wanted to say my name is the Cardboard Man.
Yes,
Cardboard man, avenger of all box factory workers everywhere.
I would like to add something to Mr. Cardboard Man's commentary, if I could.
Yes, please
Yes.
do.
I would just like to let everyone know, and maybe you guys know, that on the Shudder streaming platform, which is specializes in horror, of course, they have actually started showing a creep show series of half-hour
Ooh.
episodes. I don't know exactly how many there are because I haven't watched it yet, but they have been trying. They are trying to keep the spirit of creep show alive, and that just
Oh.
started recently. So anyone who is interested, if you can find it on Shudder Network,
Okay,
Feel free to be creeped out.
this is not a paid advertisement. Now,
This is not a paid advertisement. We are receiving no money from the Shutter Network.
if you
I am
could,
just putting this out there for public knowledge.
if you could cast a spell on our viewers to make sure that they don't remember what you just said, that would be really good for us, I think.
Please do not remember, or please do not be under the illusion that I am shilling for Shutter Network.
Very, very good, very good.
I am just providing information. Thank you.
Alrighty then. Does that wrap up your? I guess that wraps up Mr. Cardboard Man's number 3 pick. So we'll move on to. Oh, let's get rid of Mr. Cardboard Man again. He keeps popping up in the most appropriate
Thanks.
way. Anyways, let's go back to your number 2 pick then.
Oh, myself?
Yeah, yes, please.
My number 2 pick is Shaun of the Dead.
Ooh, awesome.
Shaun of the Dead. Released in 2004, directed by Edgar Wright, who has made a name for himself recently with the film Baby Driver. And it was also written by Mr. Wright and the actor Simon Pegg, who plays Shaun. It stars Simon Pegg, of course, and Nick Frost as his friend Ed. And they both also appeared in Edgar Wright's films Hot Fuzz and The World's End. They play two 30-something underachievers who share a flat or an apartment. It is known as a flat in London, England. Shaun works in a small electronics store, and Ed works at beating video games, pretty much. And they are both tested as a zombie apocalypse overtakes London, and during which Shaun and Ed try to rescue Shaun's girlfriend, mom, and stepfather. The film, it's a funny and suspenseful tribute to a number of horror and science fiction films, particularly George Romero, the late George Romero, who Rosto just talked about, the Creepshow film. And in return, Romero had an appreciation for this film. He was a fan of it, and he enjoyed its take on the zombie genre. And there's a lot of charm to this film. Of course, in Shaun and Ed's friendship, it survives a number of ordeals all the way through to the end of the film. And the film often mixes humor and horror to sometimes shocking effect, especially near the end, where they take refuge in their local pub, the Winchester. And it's very suspenseful. And there's some very good practical makeup effects as well. There are a number of good practical makeup effects all through the film, but it plays it in the first hour or so. It's played more for humor and like very dark humor, but the film sort of shifts in tone near the end to something a bit more serious.
Hey.
But the end, but you know, there's a fairly happy ending, and it's not the most frightening film I've ever seen, but very entertaining and very effective. And
Yeah,
in my
definitely.
opinion, it reaches the. Say again, please, Cardboard Man.
Definitely entertaining, more than scary.
Yes, definitely. In my opinion, it reaches the 8th circle.
Oh, the 8th circle already. We're getting close to the devil in the very cold place. Believe it or not, the last circle is very cold.
Ah!
And that ends my summation of Shaun of the Dead from 2004.
Oh,
Thank
no.
you, Ed.
I totally
Thank you,
recommend.
Ed.
Yes.
Thank
You very much. I totally recommend that movie. I only seen it once, and that was last year. So I definitely.
I wasn't very impressed by this movie.
How could you
I
not
thought
be
you said it was
impressed?
entertaining.
Yeah, it's an horror, I mean.
That's
Okay.
it. Mr. Cardboard
enough.
Man, well, I mean, we have to realize that Mr. Cardboard Man, he is just cardboard, so he doesn't have much of a personality or anything, so we'll just take his opinion and put it out with the other cardboard, I suppose. And my number 2 pick.
Oh
my
my.
My number 2 pick. No, actually, it was a toss-up. My number 1 and my number 2 pick were toss-ups, but my number 2 pick is actually Army of Darkness, or somewhat may call it Evil Dead 3 by Sam Raimi. And this movie, I actually saw this movie Yes, number 3.
Boomstick.
I saw this movie before I saw the two previous films. So, but what I liked about this movie is that it was truly gruesome in the way they did the special effects. And Ash, the main character, played by Bruce Campbell, he had the most insane comical quality to his character, but while being set in a movie that was very disturbing and dark in some ways. They did keep a lot of the lighting very, very, very well, but certain scenes like the graveyard were totally awesome. I loved how they mixed the medieval horror aspect to modern technology. There's something
Yes,
special about Ash running around with a chainsaw in medieval Europe, chopping up whatever he can get his hands on. So,
Yes, I agree.
It was a true movie to its genre, and I think it probably beats out other movies, even though it was the number 3 in the series. I also thought that the stop motion animation was particularly good, especially with the skeletons. I was always a fan of stop motion animation as a kid, and I always play with these little figurines and role playing things like that with my buddies when I was, I don't know, maybe
Yes.
8 or 9 years old. But it was
Very essential experience.
very essential, and you don't really see stop motion animation too much these days. Everything is CGI.
Mostly CGI.
Yeah, everything's
Mostly
CGI, and that's unfortunate. I like the little characters. It gives it a little, even though you know it's not real, it does give it a little more aspect of realism to it. And I think they also took some of the best elements from demonic possession and ghost stories and various stories about magic, and they mixed it all together to make this very cohesive story. So he kind of comes at the beginning of the movie. He comes through the portal and he falls on his face, and he's just kind of like, there's a modern car there, and they're sitting in medieval Europe. So the special effects were truly outstanding for its time back in too. And
I think it's also based on the comic book stories, right? The Army of Darkness.
No.
oh,
There was a comic book adaptation produced by Dark Horse Comics, but to the best of my knowledge, there were no previous comic. They may have taken inspiration from some comics, but there was no particular comic that came before Army of Darkness. Just the two Evil Dead films.
although there was a spin-off TV series that appeared 3 years ago called Ash versus the Evil Dead, and Ken actually, I didn't even know it existed, but Ken introduced me to that, and I really liked the TV series, but honestly,
and the video game is there too.
The video game.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, there's a video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I've never heard of the video game, so I'm not that kind of fan. I'm just a fan of the movie.
That's all right.
And the TV series to an extent, but there was a couple things in the TV series that I had to let the TV series go because it was a little bit too gruesome for me, and I just couldn't.
I loved it.
Yes. We know you loved it. We know you loved it for sure. And the most scary movie, the most scary scene, I should say, was definitely the graveyard scene when he's trying to retrieve the Necronomicon. So there's 3 Necronomicons all in this pedestal-like thing, and he's trying to guess the right one, and he's like, oh, it's too easy. I'll just pick the hard one, and it turns out that's not the right one, and it bites his hand and stuff like that, and it flies around and whatnot. But the most spooky part of that whole scene was when the resurrection of the skeletons and hands were coming out of the ground and whatnot. It's very reminiscent of old style horror, but they took the darkness and made it something truly spooky to watch. So I think this movie, for rating in hell, I would say it probably would be in the 6th of 9th circle of hell, because they may have went a little over the top, but it's still truly terrifying, and that's where I think it. Right. Mr.
Thank you.
Cardboard Man, Mr. Cardboard Man,
Th-
you've been hiding over there, and
Uh, yeah,
I,
I was hiding
I,
because I
I
was scared, and I, I'm 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 kind of surprised that you gave it only 6 out of 9.
well,
I thought
there's
it
always
would
room for
deserve.
improvement. My next pick, you'll see what I did it, because really in the last layer of hell, um, we got to reserve that for only the worst of souls and worst of.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Uh, my second pick is Possession from 1981. It's a movie directed by very famous Polish director Andrzej Zulawski, and of course, beautiful Isabella Gianni is playing the main role. Actually, it's a double role. She's playing this Anna and Helen from the school that is identical to Anna. The story is really complicated. So basically, what's going on is guy comes back from some kind of mission back to Berlin and finds out that his wife is cheating on him and kind of neglecting everything. And then basically what we see in the end that she is cheating on him with a kind of lizard human.
Lizard man. Don't tell me
Creature,
about the lizard man. I don't like serpents. You just keep that to yourself. Just.
some sort of creature that basically changes Anna, and she becomes possessed by this um, entity that makes her do weird and crazy things. Uh, I think the most scary scene is from the underpassage where she gets this. It's a possession fit with kind of like epileptic movements and sounds, and that was crazy. I mean, Isabella Adjani is. I think she was born for this kind of scenes and for this kind of movies, and that's probably the most gruesome scene. I was really spooked. I was scared when I saw her. And why is this movie different from others? Well, it is different because I mean there are some similar movies like Repulsion and some others, but this is really different. Also because of the acting of Isabella Adjani.
Okay.
So I think she definitely did the whole movie. Basically, she took the stage. So
Yes, she did. And
yeah,
may I also point out that Sam Neill, who's also in the Jurassic Park and
yeah,
Event Horizon, very notable actor. He played the husband. I think, did you mention that already, or
yeah. I didn't. Sorry,
that's
Sam Neill.
okay. Yes,
Yeah,
you must remember this. You must.
I'm sorry. I'm just a cardboard man.
I know you're just cardboard, but
Well,
we
well,
need
well,
you to reach higher level
the
of
thing about
cardboard.
cardboard
Sound.
is that
Exactly.
you can always cut it up to make it into something more useful.
Yeah.
Ah,
So I forgot to mention Sam Neill, notable actor who plays actually her husband, and he did also a very good job on playing the desperate man who trying to find out what's going on with his crazy wife.
yes, agreed.
So that was excellent. And from my circle, I would rate it 8 out of 9.
8 out of 9. Who are getting another 8 out of 9 circle? This is
If I
getting.
may add a little extra addendum, we
Yes.
should
Yeah,
note
please.
that this is a very, very emotionally intense and somewhat controversial film. It's not a typical horror film with ghastly villains. It's a
Yeah,
bit more intimate and
psychological.
psychological,
Yeah.
but there is some nudity and controversial content. So please be aware if you choose to seek this film out. It is very well done, but it may make you queasy.
Mr. Gargoyle approves of your rating and. Alright. We're down
Thank
to.
you.
You're very welcome. Now we're down to our number one picks. We're down to our number one pick, so please go ahead and tell us what the most spooky movie it is that you had picked.
Me?
Yes, yes, of course you.
Of course, me. Well, I should say that my number one pick is maybe not the spookiest, although there are certainly spooky moments. But I have watched it personally over 10 times, and I find it very entertaining as well as somewhat gross. It is a film from 1987 called The Hidden. Some people may have heard of it, some may not. It is directed by Jack Shoulder of Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's Revenge, the second film, and it was written by Jim Koof under the pseudonym of Bob Hunt, who is the creator of the TV series Grimm from several years back.
Oh, okay, that rings a bell.
I believe you have talked about it, yes. It stars Kyle MacLachlan, who played Agent Cooper in Twin Peaks, and Michael Nouri, who has recently been in the Kevin Costner TV series Yellowstone, and Claudia Christian, who played Ivanova on Babylon 5, and she was recently on the series 911, and a fellow named Edo Ross, who has been in many action and suspense films from the 1980s and 1990s. The plot concerns two aliens from warring races who find themselves on Earth. One is a violent criminal who develops a fondness for fast cars, fast music, and fast money, played by several actors and actresses and one dog through the course of the film. And the other one is a law officer who has inhabited the body of missing FBI agent Lloyd Gallagher, and he's played by Kyle MacLachlan. And this story takes place in Los Angeles, and a Los Angeles police detective, Tom Beck, who is played by Michael Nouri, he finds himself teaming up with and alternately babysitting the alien police officer because he is unfamiliar with the ways of Earth, specifically how to use Tylenol and Alka-Seltzer, as is observed to comedic effect through several times during the film. Now, the special effects team included a fellow named Kevin Yeager, who was actually the creator of the Freddy Krueger makeup and many other projects through the 1980s and 90s, and also Robert Kurtzman, who was also involved with many projects from the 1980s to the present, and who was also part of the special effects house KNBEFX until 2003. The draw of this film is not just the action and horror elements, though both are well done, but the relationship between Gallagher and Beck as they discover common ground, even though they're from different galaxies. And it's also unexpectedly funny at a number of times throughout the film, with sharply written dialogue and situations. Now, the scariest or most visceral moment in the film occurs when the alien criminal does its first transfer that we see between human hosts inside a hospital, as the host it's in has been damaged in a police shootout. The resulting practical effects extravaganza is very slimy and very tentacly and very creepy. And it will make any practical effects aficionado very happy to witness. There was a sequel made in 1993 that actually had Michael Nouri in it for a few minutes.
Hmm?
I would say view that at your own risk. It's actually been available in a combination pack with the first film, but the Warner Archive Blu-ray of this film, the original film, is the best, with special features including a special effects test footage and commentary by the director. And as I said, I've watched this film at least 10 times, so I would put it in the 9th circle.
The ninth circle of hell.
Yes.
Oh, jeez, the devil's coming for you now. Well, he can't really because he's.
I think
upside
he's
down.
too late.
They beat him to the punch, eh?
Yes, I think you did. I think I think he would find me very boring anyway, so I don't think he's too concerned with my presence.
Very, very interesting. I'll have to ponder this a little bit. I'm not sure if I agree with your 9 rating or.
Well, have you seen the film?
No, so I can't really make much comment on it.
Then you cannot judge yet.
But I am Mr. Gargoyle.
Yeah, I remember the Hidden a little bit. I
Yes.
don't. I didn't see the sequel, Hidden 2. That I don't think it get much success as the first one. But I
Not
remember.
very much.
Yeah, but I remember the first one was really creepy. When I saw it the first time,
Yes.
of course now with the CGI and all kinds of crazy horrors, it's a little bit different. But I just take my first feeling on this movie. It was really creepy. Those metamorphoses when the people were kind of changing to
Yes.
some alien-like people and
The difference in personalities.
difference in personality. That was really creepy.
Yes, I agree.
agree. I agree with Ken.
The character work. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't like movie like with lots of ketchup and but
No.
it was definitely by this story and the possibility that someone can actually enter and change your personality. That was really creepy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with Ken that it was pretty good.
Thank you.
Sure.
And by the way, my name is Cardboard.
Man.
Cardboard.
Man.
You mean Cardboard Man, right? I think Cardboard Man, he's sort of popping in and out of the stream here, so hopefully he's not going to be cut off anymore, but we'll see.
His presence will always be with us.
Yes, his presence will always be with us.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks.
Right, so that was your number 1 pick, was it? Okay.
Yes, it was.
We'll move to my number 1 pick. Truly terrifying, truly terrifying. My number 1 pick was American Werewolf in London by, who is it by now? John Landis. John Landis. Okay. Mr. Gargoyle approves this movie 100%. Now, when I was a small little lad, a small little gargoyle, I had tiny, tiny little horns. They were just starting to come out of the top of my head here. And I was afraid of this movie. I found that I had nightmares about this movie when I was... Well, I thought that the use of silence at the start of the movie and throughout a lot of the movie was... It created a lot of suspense. I recently watched it again. Started to understand why it was a bit spooky for me. They also, the director also had a nice, actually I was reading up about this. It turns out that he picked certain storms and weather that he would shoot in to enhance the effect or the scare factor of the film. So I thought that was a really good use of it. And in the way they followed the characters around the movie, the character intensity was always, you were always on the edge of your seat. It added to the realism of the movie as well. The special effects of the wolf obviously were top notch for the time. I mean, considering this was made in 1981, you know, they had real costumes, I believe, for the werewolf. Maybe can enlighten me more about that, but I believe that's how it anyways. And they had the blood on the fangs and stuff like that. And then in the distance, there was the wolf howling in the background, so forth. So the most scary scene for me of the movie was definitely at the
That's
first part of the movie where David, Mr. Cardboard Man. Okay, that I'm hearing some shuffling, which sounds like cardboard, but maybe it was me.
he's 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 playing. He's dealing solitaire.
He's playing with cardboard. That's all we'll say. Anyhow, I thought the very first couple scenes of the movie were the best. Simply, they were walking around in the wilderness. They got lost. It's very dark. It started to rain a little bit, and it was
Yes.
foggy. And they're looking for some place to stay, and they can't find any place. But they do happen to find this pub in the middle of nowhere in this northern. I guess it was Scotland that they were in, right? I think so. And so they go into this tavern, and it reminded me of a situation that me and
I
Rob,
think it was the outskirts of London.
outskirts of London. Okay,
I may be wrong. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I perused that
Peru,
film.
Peru is that film. Okay, so
Yeah, she was a nurse in the hospital, and she lived actually in outskirts of London. That's right. So the
right.
story was based in the London.
Oh, yeah, the story was based in London, but I think the original, it was in the countryside to start, and then they slowly it's moved into the city as the wolves started terrorizing London.
Oh yes, you're right. They were hiking in the somewhere, I don't know, in England or Scotland, whatever, and then they moved to London.
Yes, 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 they certainly did, and you know, for kids to see this movie, you know, it would have been totally terrifying. You know, the thought of having a wolf or a dog, you know, chase you down. I mean, me and I lived out in the country, you know, so wolves and bears and stuff like that is always sort of like a, you know, Mr.
As
Guard.
did I.
Yeah, well, exactly. You did. You certainly did. I mean, how could someone that looks like you live in the city? I mean, you would scare people to death. But enough of that. Enough of that. I don't want to make fun too much of you, but the point of the point of the movie is that was the most scary scene for me. They find the tavern, and a scene that happened between me and Cardboard Man, where we were in a particular place, and we walked into a pub, and everybody turns to look at you, and they gaze down into your soul. Mr. Cardboard Man must remember that situation that happened to us. And when you walk into an establishment like that, you essentially just want to walk back out the door. But these two brave souls, they didn't. They wanted to find out. They wanted to find a place to stay. They needed a place to stay. But then they were told, "You cannot stay here. You really cannot stay here." So they wander around, and that's when the infamous scene where they're attacked by the werewolf. Nobody believes that they were attacked by an animal. They thought it was, or they thought it was something else. I don't remember exactly what they thought it was. But that was what I thought was one of the most scary movies for me. And for my rating in hell, I am going to give this the eighth circle of cell rating, and
Very high approval.
yes, Mr.
That's
Gargoyle approved.
very nice review. I kind of wonder what year did you see it?
I saw it, I think, probably in about 1984 or 5, or maybe 4, so I would have been about 8, maybe 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old at the time.
Oh, okay. So
But
because well, when I saw it first time, that was well maybe decade after the release. So
I see.
there were already all kinds of good movies around. So I and I must confess I kind of watch it just because of the Jenny Agutter. So
Yes.
so
She's wonderful.
she is a really good nurse, and and she takes a good care of them. And but what I meant to say, I didn't have opportunity to watch it like right after the release, so I didn't really feel the same, like you. It didn't make any. I didn't feel spooked or didn't feel
Oh,
any fear or emotions. It was more like bit funny movie and more like fantasy than horror.
With some shocking
With
moments.
some shocking moments, but it
well,
didn't hit me. It didn't hit me the same as you. Only because I watched it like much later after the release. So
with all due respect, Mr. Cardboard Man, you are a plain brown box. I mean, I don't think cardboard particularly has emotions. I mean, how could you be scared? Really?
well, I'm trying. I'm trying,
Well,
and
we'll give you credit. I mean, you do have a nice circular mouth there, Mr. Cardboard Man.
thank you. Thanks.
What you do with your circular mouth is between you and the other cardboard, but we'll just.
Uh, well, I was trying to make a hole, but I couldn't open my mouth. So
You couldn't open your mouth. So tell
yeah.
me, Mr. Cardboard Man, how is it that you eat if you cannot open your mouth?
Well, I don't eat.
That's right. Cardboard doesn't need to eat, does
Yeah.
it?
Okay.
All
So
right. So it's your turn for your number one pick there, Mr. Cardboard Man. So let us have your cardboardian insight.
my number one is the movie called Orphan. Not to be confused with The Orphanage, that is a Spanish movie, but my number one is Orphan from 2009,
Yeah.
directed by Colette Serra, which is a female director. And she took this very interesting story and made a really nice horror movie with Vera Farmiga, who is very experienced in this genre, and Peter Sarsgaard.
Price guide, okay.
Yeah, he plays her husband, and they're a couple. And honestly, when I saw this movie the first time, I was really spooked. I was afraid to fall asleep for 2 weeks because there is this really crazy, shocking story about the 9-year-old girl who got adopted by these two, by a couple,
Yes.
and in the end, it it is revealed that this 9-year-old girl is actually a adult woman who suffers some kind of dwarfism and who actually gets around the several families that actually in the end got killed by her. So just the thought of it, you know, it was really creepy and scary. And I don't know what. It was horrific. So this was my number one movie. It's really different from other movies. I never even thought of this kind of story can happen. Like you adopt the little girl who can imitate the voice and basically playing kid, and in the end, this is a adult woman
Yeah.
that attacks the family in the end. At the end of the movie, that's just crazy. And the most gruesome scene, of course, the it's the revelation of the truth at the end of the movie
Okay.
when she started to remove her false teeth and makeup and everything else, and she actually is a adult woman with she's very little woman little grown with some kind of dwarfism or some kind of hormonal disease combined with uh, schizophrenia and I don't know what else. That was just crazy. That was crazy. And definitely 9 out of 9. That was the hell. I mean, this was the hell.
Okay, very, very scary indeed. So we have some 8s and 9s, and I think once you hit that layer of hell, you're pretty much done for. You have no hope of anything at that point. Did anyone have any comments about our choices today?
I would just like to say they're all solid. They're all solid choices, and I hope that the audience will seek these films out and others. There's a very wide world of entertainment in the field of fear to be sought out and absorbed and be terrified by. And thank you for your time.
Anyways, I think that's basically how we're going to end this. But as you know,
would Cardboard Man have anything he'd like to conclude in saying? Mr. Cardboard Man.
I really enjoy the horror movies. It's very. I think the horror movies are really subjective movies because everyone would be scared different way, you know. And then, of course, when you're getting older, you have your own horrors. You know, you live your life with all kinds of horrors. So, not. I mean, you don't get easily scared. So, I think the movie must be really great idea, you know, and really well done. So it's not easy to make a horror movie, good horror movie. I think it's not easy. So
I agree.
it's very hard genre, and I admire guys, directors who take upon this quest and make some really good pieces, good movies. Yeah. So
I agree.
guys, if there is any chance to see some good horror movie, yeah, you take it.
yes, for sure. And it's being Halloween in less than a week, it's the best time. Also, there's a lot of public events out there to spookify you as well. But anyhow, eternity is forever, but this podcast isn't. And that will wrap up this episode. Thank you to Kenzilla and Cardboard Man for joining me in this spooky experience of terrors and of the underworld. I would also thank you very much. I would also like to thank you, the viewers, for listening or watching, and to encourage you to check out our other picks if you haven't done so already. If you have any questions, please leave them for Mr. Gargle Man in the comment section. Also, to view or listen to more of these podcasts, like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel by using the watermark in the bottom right corner, or follow us on Twitter. You can also listen to these episodes on popular podcasting platforms such as Libsyn, iTunes, and Stitcher. For a full list of podcasting platforms, please see the description on our website at multimedia.ca/media-channels. We appreciate your spooky support, and join us next time if you dare, or are able. We would not want you to get caught out in the cold alone, or that you might risk being devoured.